Today's session is a full Salesforce CTA mock with Amit Yadav, presenting a scenario called United Bank. Amit is preparing for his third attempt at the CTA Review Board, and this mock is a great example of how much growth happens between attempts. This one is shorter than a typical mock, but it's dense, focused, and packed with architectural decisions. Overall, Amit did a solid job, and like every strong mock, there are clear strengths along with areas where tightening the story and trade-offs would elevate it even further. Let's jump in and see how it goes. Before we begin, a quick attribution. This content is brought to you by LucidCTA, where I work as a professional CTA coach, helping architects prepare for the review board with real-world mocks, feedback, and strategy. And a huge congratulations to the candidate I coached last year in 2025, Jillian Proya, who just passed her board and is now a Salesforce Certified Technical Architect. If you want to see her mock, that's also available right here on the LucidCTA YouTube channel. Let's go, and I'll see you on the other side of your comfort zone.
If you like it and if you feel like this should go on YouTube, then please go ahead. I'm a little scared in terms of that, it might not be good enough. But if you feel like, if you find it good, then definitely.
As far as I'm concerned, there's no such thing as a perfect mock. So
I agree with you on that.
Yeah, whatever the quality is going to be, it's going to be valuable to someone. It's going to be valuable to you. And it's going to be valuable to others who will watch it. And basically, that's kind of why I want to also do this. And that's going to be extremely valuable to me as well, because it's going to keep my skills sharp. And then hopefully get some views, and it's a gift that keeps on giving. So that's the idea here. Okay, so do you have your timer set up?
Yes, I will just use my phone.
I would say, do you have the smart countdown? You can use your phone for now if you like, but I recommend using the smart countdown timer.
So I've used this in the past, AS timer.
Okay. If you want.
So
that's completely up to you, if you want to use that or not. Let me see.
Okay, so we need to do this in 30 minutes, right?
We can do it in 45 minutes. If that's too much time, we can spend more time on Q&A, or we can spend more time on actually doing the feedback. So that's basically, let's go with the 45 and make it the best you can possibly make it. I'd like to say no pressure, but the whole point is to have some pressure. And I'm going to approach it as a judge. I'm not going to destroy you, but also not going to make it easy for you, because if I made it easy, then this would not be as useful to you.
That is the expectation as well. I would say go as tough as you can. The more feedback that I get, or the more gaps I find, it's just helps me prepare for this.
And tell me again, how long have you been preparing for the board?
So I started it in October 2023, and then I went for my first attempt in October 24.
Okay.
And then I went for my second attempt in June 25. June 25. Yeah.
Okay.
So
how did you?
So in my first attempt, I was able to clear 5 out of the 7 sections, and in the second one, I only got 3 and failed 4 sections. And I found some gaps, not in terms of technical side, but more on how I was presenting.
So right now we'll go on camera. We're going to go basically in character, and let's stay in character. Don't break character no matter what. I'm your judge, you're the candidate, and that's how we'll do it. So
absolutely.
All right, sir. So I will go off camera, and I'll start the timer on my end as well. And I'll start the timer on your first word. So please commence when ready.
Hello, everyone. My name is Amit Yadav, and I will be presenting an end-to-end solution on United Banks. United Banks is in the business of selling financial products and services like bank accounts, loans, insurance, credit, and debit cards through 2,000 branches across 5 different geographical regions. They're currently serving 20 million customers with an average of 10 million financial transactions per day, with the expectancy of doubling that number in the next 5 years through expansion in the Asia region as well. From this project, they are seeking our help with tracking sales pipeline and databases of potential customers. They're looking to get a complete picture of the customer's profile, as well as have a single global system to track all of the customer interactions and sales activities as well. Talking about actors and who would be using our system, we have executives and branch staff, as well as the branch managers who would be getting a Sales Cloud license, giving them access to all of the Sales Cloud features and allow them to manage leads and opportunities, as well as report on that data. We have contact center agents and contact center managers who would also be getting a Service Cloud license, giving them access to the case object and case management for customer support also. We have third-party agents who would be acting almost on similar lines as the branch staff. They'll be qualifying prospects and submitting applications. So we'll be giving them a partner community license, giving them access to manage prospects, leads, and Salesforce as well. And then we have 20 million customers who would be getting a CC login license, since I'm not expecting them to log in very frequently. So a CC login license would do best, and they would be getting access to their own data because of that. Talking about my system landscape, I will have Salesforce at the heart of our solution. I'm recommending to use a single org strategy because they need a unified view of the customers, no matter where the customer is based out of. So it would allow us to have that 360 picture of that customer. I'm proposing to use multi-language. That would be facilitated using a translation workbench, custom labels, XML imports, as well as knowledge translations. That would allow our system to be more robust and be available in multiple languages also. I'm also recommending to use multi-currency since they are operating out of different regions. Talking about some of the products from Salesforce that will be using our Service Cloud Voice with Bring Your Own Telephony. I'm assuming that they have a telephony system, and to avoid any complications with migrating the phone numbers, I'm recommending to you bring that system. With the assumption that it is supported by Tenfold and will be able to connect with Service Cloud Voice. We'll also be using messaging in app web for chat support, knowledge articles to provide FAQs to our customers, and then Salesforce Connect to bring in some of the data that is high in volume and allowing us to visualize in Salesforce also. From a packages perspective, we'll be using Tenfold to connect with the telephony system and DocGen to generate documents based on information provided in the records as well. Talking about the Experience Cloud sites, I'm recommending to have two different Experience Cloud sites, one specifically for the third-party agents, and the other one would be for customers. And customers would be accessing the Experience Cloud site either through the mobile publisher, which would be connected through the web server Pixie Flow, for which we'll have to raise a case with Salesforce support to have that enabled. And for internal users, I'm recommending to use the Salesforce standard mobile app, which would also be connecting to the web server Pixie Flow as well. Talking about the identity, we'll have Okta acting as our IDP, where internal users would be part of coming in from the Active Directory, and the third-party agent's identity would be stored in LDAP, and Okta supports both of those connections as well, and we'll be using SCIM APIs to connect with Salesforce also. I'm also recommending to use Marketing Cloud to run some of the marketing campaigns that the customers would be using. We did not have enough details, but I'm assuming that they would need some kind of marketing system to run those segmentations. So Marketing Cloud would be a good fit here as well. Talking about some of the systems that they already have, we have the CRM systems right now that are being operated by all of the geographical regions. I'm proposing to retire that system as that is an explicit requirement, and we will be using the ETL to migrate all of the data from that system. ETL and ESB, they have an existing ESB that we will be repurposing to use and facilitate all of the integrations, and I'm proposing to use an ETL to specifically focus on migrations and batch data sync jobs as well. ESB would be providing us with real-time or near real-time integrations, while ETL would be focusing more on data with bulk. Both of these systems would be secured using the jot-bearer flow with using mutual authentication, as that's an explicit requirement, and we'll be using Bulk API 2.0 for ETL, and we'll be using REST API and PubSub API for our ESBs as well. We also we'll be using CSVs to to import data into Salesforce. We also have an existing data warehouse that we'll continue using, and we'll use that to archive our systems and would be connected through ETL mostly. We have the core banking system, which we will be keeping, and it does support SOAP APIs. So we'll be connecting and ETL, both of the systems, to support different requirements as well. And then I'm recommending to use Google API that would allow us to validate some of the address data and geolocate some of the data as well for further users also. Moving on to my data model, please use the legend as a reference. And giving a high level, we have accounts that will be working as the central source of customers. We'll have two record types, one for customers and the one for third-party agents as well. And then we also have products and price books and price book entries, where products would be representing different financial products that might be as bank accounts or credit cards, debit cards, or anything that we would want to sell would be modeled as products here as well. We'll talk about the rest of the objects as we go along through our business requirements. So we'll quickly focus on the sales cycle, where we have the branch staff schedule financial planning workshops. So that's the one process that I'm expecting to be shifted to Marketing Cloud, where they would be running different journeys and run campaigns there to bring data from those workshops or inform customers about those workshops. Once at the workshops, the branch staff would be getting the attendee information and create prospect records in Salesforce. With this, they need to make sure that they are not duplicated, and they need to verify the customer's address as well. So I'm recommending to use the standard Salesforce mobile app for them to do this data entry, where they would have a screen flow that will allow them to create leads. We'll also have an external service created for Google API specifically that would be placed in that screen flow, and that would allow them to validate the Google addresses as well. And for duplicate handling, I'm recommending to use the standard duplicate and matching rules that would give them a warning that the record already exists. The branch staff also needs to call interested customers after the workshop to schedule an appointment, and they need to visualize what are the nearest branches that they can visit. So here I'm again recommending a custom object to store all of our branches. While migrating these branches, we will make sure we geolocate them so that we have the latitude and longitude so that we can map them. And then I'm recommending to use Service Cloud Voice here, again, with the assumption that they have the telephony system and it is supported by Tenfold. And for the data entry, the branch staff would be using the Salesforce standard mobile app and to complete this data entry. I'm also recommending to use a LWC component here to book the appointment. So this would be a quick action placed on the lead record, which once they trigger, that's where the addresses would be geocoded with Google APIs, and then appointments as a custom object is what we would be tracking to have these appointments. LWC's lightning map would allow us to visualize what are the nearest branches based on the geolocations that we'll get from Google APIs as well. The branch staff needs to create a needs analysis, and that need analysis needs to be saved in Salesforce and be resumed as well. So this would be another LWC component that would be placed on the lead. Once the customer is either on the call or they are visiting the branch in person, they would click that quick action to access the LWC, where they would go through a wizard-like structure where they can ask different questions, and then we'll create the need analysis record, which we're expecting about 3.6 million records in the system. So, it would be quite a large volume. So I would recommend that maybe archive them every 6 months and put them in the data warehouse and then bring them back if needed, but for reporting purposes as well. The need analysis also needs to trigger the application to make financial product suggestions. This was another reason why I decided to go with an LWC component instead of a screen flow here, to keep the user experience better, along with the making those recommendations and providing the logic that could be a little complex as to how the recommendations are made. So we'll have a customized data to store different combinations of recommendations, and then LWC would then present those recommendations so that the internal team can go ahead and select which recommendations need to be used for that customer specifically. The final step of the need analysis is for the customer to indicate what they would be going in with, and that needs to that would be a trigger point for them to be converted into an account, contact, and opportunity here. So I'm recommending to you, once the lead cycle is complete, on the LWC component, they would either select one or more recommendations, and then they would go ahead and update a status on the lead through the LWC component, which would then have a record trigger flow on the lead and would convert it into an account, contact, and opportunity. And this would automatically, based on what recommendations did they accept based on the need analysis, we will add the relevant product and price books to as opportunity products as well. That would be done through the record trigger flow on the lead. Then we also need to send a summary of that conversation. So I'm assuming that this is about the questions that they had to answer through in the need analysis. So we will be using a doction action that would go ahead and generate a PDF, and we'll use the email delivery method as the output of that doction template, and that would be sent to the customer based on the need analysis records as well. We also need to make sure the close date is within 2 weeks of the current date, and the status is set to open. So I'm recommending to have a before record triggered flow on the opportunity that would set the close date to 2 weeks out, and then update the status to open upon creation as well. We also use third-party agents. So that's where we would be modeling them as accounts and contacts, and would be getting a partner community license, giving them access to the lead object, and that's where they would be tracking their prospects, and the rest of the process would stay the same, as they would also be using the same LWC component to ask questions about the need analysis and then convert them into an account, contact, and opportunities as well. Moving on to the bank account application process. For the deals that are transaction type as a financial product, the bank staff can open an account right there on the spot. So we have this application and applicants object. Applicants would be acting as a junction object to indicate which customers are going to be part of this application, and then the application we would be tracking. The reason why I decided to do it as a different object than opportunity is my understanding was that for one opportunity, we can have multiple applications, maybe for one for, let's say, credit card, one for bank account, or one for debit card. So one opportunity could result into multiple applications, and all of those need to be tracked separately, and hence a custom object, and then we'll have a junction object to indicate which applicants are part of that application. The financial products would be modeled as products and price books. That's where it would give us a brief idea as to how the products would look like, or what products is the customer applying for, and that's where we will be tracking the journey through that deal. We have the staff members in the third party who would convert the prospects to the customer record. So this is something that we have already done through the LWC, and then we'll also need to get their identification documents such as passport and proof of addresses. So these are documents, I'm assuming that they would be supplied through emails, and then the internal team members can go ahead and upload them into Salesforce in the standard files against the contact object as well. The third part, if the deal was converted by a third-party agent, the applications need to be assigned to the branch manager. So I'm recommending to have a record triggered flow on the opportunity. Sorry, this would be on the application. That would allow whenever an application is created as a result of an opportunity, it would be assigned to based on the location, it would automatically be assigned to the branch manager as well. The branch staff needs to create a bank application by capturing the customer's details, and they need to be able to access the documents and all of the products identified during the need analysis, which would be available as opportunity products here. So they can track the whole negotiation cycle. The new application record would be created. I'm assuming that these would be created manually based on what products they are selecting, and we can track that independently. And by default, the status for the application would be set as in progress. We also need to validate that the applicants are not less than 18 years, as well as a number of 5 applicants is allowed. So we'll have a record trigger flow on the status of the application. Once that would validate and check the date of birth, which is a standard field on the contact, and use that to find out the age of the applicant. And if it's less than 18, then it would throw an error. And similarly, if we have more than 5 applicants on an application, it would throw an error and would not allow the branch staff to submit that application. The UV staff can also contact the applicant using a predefined email. So I'm recommending to have some predefined email templates. To handle the multi-language, we would be going with Visualforce email templates so that they are available in every language. And then we'll have those emails can be sent out manually by selecting the right template and then making the modifications on the fly if they need to change anything in that. If the bank account application is a foreign investor, then it needs to be approved by the branch manager. So I'm recommending to have a custom field on the application to track what type of application it is. And then we'll have a triggered flow on that custom field that before it changes to submitted, it needs to be sent for approval to the branch manager. So we'll just use the standard out of the box approval processes and submit it to the branch manager. The record would be locked. And then once the branch manager has approved the application, the branch staff can go ahead and submit that application as well. The bank application needs to be reviewed by government agencies, in which case the core banking system will need to cancel that application. So this is, I'm assuming that this is an out-of-the-box facility of the functionality of the core banking system, which allows the government agencies to access and then have them review the system. But in this case, from the Salesforce side, we'll have an integration with core banking system, which would be part of our next business requirements. But once that information comes back that this needs to be reviewed by the government agencies, then that would be reflected in the status field of the application, and we'll have a record triggered flow that would send the email to the owner of that application as well. Once the email application details are complete, the branch staff would go ahead and submit that application, and then all of this information needs to be sent to the core banking system. That's when I am recommending to have a quick action to submit that application to the core banking system, and then we'll have a screen flow again with an external service that would be connecting through the ESB, and will be using the request and reply pattern. So it will make a request through ESB to the core banking system. Core banking system would do a remote call in to get the necessary details, and then would send all of that information to the core banking system, and then send the information back to the ESB, and then ESB would do a remote call in and update the necessary details on the application as well. If there are any errors while creating that application, they would be displayed right there on the screen flow itself to notify the branch staff immediately as well. If any application has not been submitted within 7 days of creation, we need to notify the branch staff. We need to notify the branch staff member for follow-up. So we'll have a scheduled path on the application, and once the application gets created, we'll have a scheduled path that would be triggering 7 days after the creation, and it would check if the status is still pending after 7 days. It would send an email notification letting them know that they need to do something about it. Moving on to the customer service process, we have the contact center agents who need to provide services to the customers via phone, email, and web chat. So for emails, I'm recommending to have email to case creation, where the customers would receive a support email that they can send emails to, and that would create cases in Salesforce. For phone, I'm recommending to have Service Cloud Voice with their own telephony system. And then for web chats, I'm recommending to have the messaging in app and web feature, and they would be able to then initiate chats from their Experience Cloud sites as well. For contact centers, they need to be able to search for customers using their customer number, 4 digits of the social security number, and the bank account number. So this would be made to them using the global search. The social security number is going to be an encrypted field. So I'm recommending to have the last 4 digits be placed in another custom field, which is not encrypted, so that we can use that as a search criteria, and global search would be able to find that. And then if the customer does not exist, the contact center also needs to be able to create a customer and then send that information over to the core banking system. So this is where they would use the standard create button on the account, and then we'll have a platform event being triggered from Salesforce that would be subscribed by the ESP, and then ESP would send that information over to the core banking system. And then once the customer is created there, they would get the customer number, and then ESP would do a remote call in and update the customer number on the customer record as well. Customers can also raise service requests from their mobile devices or the portal. So I'm recommending to use the standard object cases here. for tracking all of the service requests, and they need to be assigned to the relevant regional contact center agent based on the capacity of the agent as well as what type of service is required. So I'm recommending to use omni-channel here, and we'll be using the skill-based and capacity-based routing to find necessary agents so that they can accept those requests and act on them accordingly. Or raising these cases from the mobile device, again, the mobile publisher would be there. I would recommend to start procuring the licenses for mobile publisher and then start sending all of the assets to Salesforce as quickly as possible, since this has dependency on the Play Store and the App Store on iOS and Android side as well. So I would recommend to start that as an early process. For contact center agents, they need to create service requests for inbound contacts with customers. For customers, we have some defined service level agreements as based on the customer's priority level. So we have a custom field on the customer that indicates the priority level of that person. For managing the SLAs, I'm recommending to have entitlements in place. So they would be connected. Based on the priority level, we will be assigning entitlements to customers. On customer creation, we'll have a record triggered flow that would assign the necessary entitlement. And then we'll have another record triggered flow upon case creation that would find the necessary entitlement from the customer record, and then it would assign it to the cases. We'll have entitlement templates being created based on the SLA. We'll have different entitlement templates. And once the right entitlement is assigned to the case, a case milestone will be triggered for that customer. And then if it's a VIP customer, we'll have a milestone for 24 hours. And if that is missed, then we'll have an email being sent to the regional manager notifying them that one of the team members has missed a milestone as well. The rest of the customers would have a 2-day response window. So for them, we'll have a different entitlement template that will allow them to have a 48-hour window for the responses as well. Moving on to the ability to amend customer address. So contact centers need to be able to update the address, validating that real time. So again, we'll have a quick action. So instead of directly updating the field, they'll be using that quick action to enter the new address. And then we'll have a screen flow that would do the address validation in real time and letting them know if the address is right or not. And then we'll have a custom field to track if the customer is active or not. If the customer is inactive, then contact centers would not be allowed to, center agents would not be allowed to make any changes to the record as well. So we'll have a validation rule that looks at the customer status before updating the record as well. Once the address details are updated, they need to be synchronized back to the core banking system. So this is going to be another integration that would be triggered based on any updates made in Salesforce. We'll again be using a fire and forget pattern where we trigger a platform event from Salesforce whenever a customer is updated. That platform event would be subscribed by the ESP. ESP would pass on that information to the core banking system, and then it'll update the necessary system here. These contact center agents also need the ability to search for bank account transactions that have been made to show credit and debits in their account. And the system needs to provide by filtering the date range and the account number and type. So the transaction volumes is very high here, so I would not recommend to have them on platform. So I'm recommending to use an external object through Salesforce Connect with an OData adapter hosted on the ESP, and then we'll just be able to use the standard list view and reports. I missed drawing the object on my data model, but ideally we'll have another object for financial history here, and we'll have restriction rules so that for external users will have restriction rules. For internal users, I'm assuming that it would be okay for them to see the financial records as well. The contact center managers also need to create employee discipline records that are confidential. So I'm assuming that this is more around that the employees, if we receive a complaint about an employee, so we'll have cases. We'll have 2 record types on cases, one for specifically employee discipline, and the another one is for customer services. So employee discipline would only be available to the managers, and they can create the necessary service request for employee discipline and would only be visible to them. Customers have requirements to access a portal and raise customer services. They also need to be the capabilities like modifying their profile data, view FAQs and crowdsource answers to the questions. So again, that's when our customer experience cloud would come in. they would be able to handle case creations and review capabilities on that side. We'll be using Salesforce knowledge that would be exposed on the portal as FAQs that the customers would be able to search. And then we'll also make sure we enable chatter and provide enable the permissions to view other portal members so that they can collaborate on the site itself. Moving on to the data requirements, we need to make sure we need to replicate all of the customer information from the core banking system. So talking about my data migration slide, my data migration, we would be using an ETL-based migration approach here. And all of our customer information that is existing in the core banking system, we would be bringing that information in a staging database. So all of our customers, applications, bank account information, and everything. And just quickly talking about the bank account information, we have assets. That's what we would be modeling as bank accounts. We have a high volume, but the object should be able to handle it. And then we'll also have, if we have credit cards and debit cards, all of them would be modeled as assets to keep the scalability in mind as also. Coming back to our data migration strategy, so we'll have the staging database where all of the information about customers, applications, and bank account information would be placed in, and then we'll be working with the data stewards to make sure we identify the criteria as what's clean data, and then we'll be consolidating all of that data. We'll be deduplicating it to make sure and identify what are the different duplication criteria. We'll standardize all of that data, we'll clean and enrich, and once everything looks good, then we'll move that to a canonical database that would be resembling the Salesforce standard format, and the necessary objects and fields would be matching. Once we do that, we will be doing some partial migrations in the QA sandbox and the UAT sandbox for us to run some scripts and see how our scripts are running and behaving, and see if everything looks good. We'll do a full migration in the full sandbox where we would be making sure all of the scripts and noting down how much time it takes so that we can plan the migration accordingly. And then once everything looks good, then we'll do a full migration to the production environment as well. We have about 15 million bank accounts, and we need to make sure we bring that information from the core banking system. So this was written as Salesforce to core banking system. So I'm assuming that this is the future data that we would be creating. And so we already have an integration happening wherever when applications are created in Salesforce, all of them are sent to the through the ESB to the core banking system. So that would make sure that both of the systems are in sync and all of the data is available in core banking system as well. Customers' bank accounts and their relationships are created directly in core banking system as well. And that also needs to come back to Salesforce. So we need to have on the nightly basis. So I'm recommending to have another integration here which would be done on the ETL as a scheduled job, and we'll be using bulk API to connect with first the core banking system, see what records are created on that system, and then we'll bring them back into Salesforce as well through ETL. Existing sales opportunities and prospects need to be made available in Salesforce. Currently, they are doing this in spreadsheets. So they have about 1,000 spreadsheets, so 2 spreadsheets per branch with approximately 1,000 prospects and opportunities as well. So that's where we will be migrating all of the CSVs again into the staging database. And then we'll be going through that process of deduplicating them to make sure we are not leaving any duplicates. The pick list values would also be standardized. Again, we'll make sure we'll work with the data stewards to identify the right pick list values and then standardize and have scripts to put them in the standard format as well. Sales opportunities and prospect need to be available in the data warehouse. So anything that would be considered as cold storage would be going directly into the data warehouse. So we'll have another connection from the ETL that would send all of the cold storage data to data warehouse, and only the hot storage or running data that's needed on a daily basis would be the one that would be migrated over to Salesforce. The system needs to ensure minimal duplications. So that's again would be process of our cleaning the data, where on the staging databases we'll identify what defines good data, and then based on that we'll run our deduplication scripts to make sure no customers are duplicated and while migrating to Salesforce as well. We have approximately 10K analysis created on a daily basis, and 20% of them are progressing as opportunities. So we'll end up with 3.6 million need analysis records per year and about 730K opportunities that would result out of this. So 3.6 million is going to be a large data volume. So I would recommend to maybe have an archiving strategy of about 6 months where we keep them on platform, and after 6 months we'll have an ETL job that would send all of that data from Salesforce over to the data warehouse as well. And then 730K opportunities is not a high volume, so we can keep them on platform for reporting and tracking purposes as well. They also need to load 5 million historical service requests into Salesforce, and they grew at a rate of 5,000 cases per day. So we're looking at about 1.8 million cases per year and 5 million existing service requests. My assumption here is that we don't need to have all of them into Salesforce, but if we do need to report them, then my recommendation would be to have an external object for case history, where the data would be coming in from the data warehouse, and so that we don't have to keep them on platform, and the system can form with and system can have better performances as well. So we'll be exposing all of our old cases as external object, and then we'll make sure we archive them every 3 months to keep the system as performant as possible. And the rest of the data would be migrated over to the data warehouse as well. We'll also be using the restriction rules to make sure customers only have access to their case history and not any other customers as well. Moving on to the reporting requirements. We have the branch staff and the third-party agents who need to report on the need analysis as well as the applications. So they would have access to the need application object because of the ownerships, and then they'll also have access to applications, and they'll be able to use the standard Salesforce summary reports to report on both of these objects as well. Branch executives need a dashboard to track the performing branch managers based on the volume and size of the application. So again, this would be done through the standard Salesforce dashboards, which would allow them to get a number of closed applications in a certain period of time. And then again, we only have about 2 million applications. So I would recommend them to keep them on platform for a year, and then they would be able to report on that data. Customers need to be able to view a history of their service request. So again, we are using the standard case object to model the service request, and we'll be using a sharing set so that they only have access to their own cases, and we'll be exposing a tab specifically to track their service request also. Branch managers need to do a trend analysis of how long applications are spent in the various sales volume. So since the cycle for applications is about 7 days, which is not a lot, and then so I'm recommending to use historical trending reporting here, which would allow the branch managers to report on the data. It would be available for 3 months, so they can see how long an application and how it progress through different stages. I did consider using CRMA here, where if the advanced trend, if the trend reports need to be more complex, then we can definitely consider that as an enhancement. Moving on to the accessibility requirements, we have the internal users who would be stored in the Active Directory and the third-party agents in their LDAP. So Okta would be able to connect with both of the systems and can act as an IDP here. Internal users need to be automatically provisioned and deprovisioned. So this is an out-of-the-box feature with Okta. So it would be able to handle role-based access and would be able to provision and deprovision user directly from Okta itself. Customers also need to be able to self-register themselves. So we'll make sure we enable self-registration on the customer experience cloud side, and because person accounts would be enabled and customers would be modeled as person accounts. Every time a customer tries to sign up, it would create the necessary person account and then allow them to track their data as well. Moving on to the security requirements, we have branch managers and the branch staff who needs to see the customers and related information in their geographical location. So I am recommending to have the role hierarchy based on the geography. So we'll have executives based on geography, and then we'll have ownership-based sharing rules, which would share data with the people from the same role, from the same geography. And because the branch managers would be sitting on top of the branch staff, so they would be able to access all of the data that the branch staff has access to as well. The branch managers and their executives can need to see the view of the agent information from the region they manage. So we also have the role hierarchy here coming in place, where we have line managers and third-party agents who would be external users and external roles, but they would be reporting directly to the branch manager. And then because of that, all of the executives would also get access to all of their data also. Only certain branch staff trained to do can create applications for high-risk products. So for this, I'm recommending to have skills assigned to the necessary staff members and indicating which products that they can support. And then upon creation of an application, we'll have a record triggered flow that checks what type of application it is and what product it is being used, and see if the owner of that application has the necessary skill assigned based on the skill user object. And if not, then it would not allow them to create that application. Third-party agents only need to access the need analysis records that belong to them, which would then be done through the ownership of the record. So all of the records created by the third-party agents would be owned by them as well. They also have the line managers at that agency who need to be able to view these records. So that's why we have another role created for line managers specifically, and we'll have 2 roles enabled on the partner community, where line managers would be assigned the manager role and third-party managers would be assigned the most common role as well. The branch managers need to view the need analysis records from the third-party agents that they manage. So branch managers would then be sitting on top of the line managers in the hierarchy, and they would be able to access records from line managers as well. Contact center agents need to view all of the customers. So I'm recommending to have a criteria-based sharing rule placed on the account object, where we would be, based on the record type of that account, we would be sharing a view access to all of the contact center agents as well. Contact center agents need to see the cases raised by their geographical location only. So we'll have the roles configured for the agents to make sure they do not get access to cases for the accounts that they have access to. And then we'll have a criteria-based sharing rule on the cases that would be based on geography. We can create a formula field that brings in geography from the related customer and then use that as a criteria. Contact center agents cannot delete the customer record, so we will not assign them the delete access to the account object to avoid any deletion from the contact center agents at all. The employee discipline service requests need to be visible only to the managers and not the contact center agents. So we will not give the access to the employee discipline record type to the contact center agents at all, and they would only be available to the contact center managers. And then our role hierarchy would allow them to share it with the executives as well. Social security number is considered confidential and should not be stored in clear text. So we'll make sure the social security number is stored as an encrypted field, and we'll make sure we assign the view encrypted data permission to the UB branch staff through a permission set. And we'll also have another custom field that only stores the last 4 digits to make it searchable as well. Customers need the ability to view FAQs and service requests that they have raised. So we'll be using Salesforce knowledge that will be exposed on the Experience Cloud site to handle the FAQs, and sharing will be using a sharing set on the case object so that they have only access to their own cases as well. Customers, they should not be able to view service requests raised by other customers, which is an out-of-the-box feature. So the sharing set would only allow them to have access to their own cases and not other customers as well. So Salesforce keeps that in mind from security purposes as well. The executives need to see a roll-up summary data across all regions. So again, they would be able to use Salesforce summary reports that allows them to have access to just the summary level data. And then because they will be placed higher in the role hierarchy, they would be able to access all of the data across different regions that they have access to, and they'll be able to report on that data. All of the web services need to be secured with a 2-way SSL. So considering the high security in mind, all of the connections that we are building with our ESP and ETL, we are using the MTLS approach here. So we'll be using certificates on both sides to make sure both the systems are secured. And we know that which systems are they coming from and make sure both of the systems are whitelisted on each other's end as well. With some of the data migration practices that we'll make sure we keep in mind is that we defer sharing calculations before migration. All of the objects would be made as public read write, and we'll be turning them, reverting them back to their original sharing settings once the migration is complete, and then all of the flows and validations would also be turned off during the migration, and once the migration is complete, they will be turned back on. Talking about the order of migration, we'll be importing the internal users first, then we'll have products, price book, and price book entries. We'll have then prospects, need analysis, accounts, contacts, opportunities, and opportunity products. And then we'll be bringing in applications, applicants, and then entitlement cases as well. And then finally, we'll be enabling the external users as customer users so that they can receive the welcome emails. With that, I conclude my presentation. I'll be open up to Q&A now.
Amit, I will be asking you a whole bunch of questions here as your judge. If I do interrupt you, it's because I already have enough information to move on to the next thing in the interest of time. Okay, so what type of a situation is this? Is this a business to consumer, business to business? What are we dealing with here?
So it seems United Bank serves both customers, business customers, as well as individual customers also.
Okay, and how do you represent them on your data model, these customers?
For business, so I would be using person accounts for individual customers, and for business accounts, I would be using a business account.
Okay. And how would you characterize this whole program? Is it transformational? Is it greenfield, brownfield?
It would be a greenfield implementation. They have been using different CRM systems that we are retiring, and we will be replacing all of those with Salesforce.
Okay, greenfield. So we already covered all of that. A single org. Okay, so we're retiring the. Let's go take a look at the yes, right here, system landscape, and I'm going to compare it to my reference. So, is there a legacy CRM mentioned here in this particular version?
Just the CRM system.
Okay, right. So the CRM system, that's the one. Okay, very good. So, got a source core banking system, the data warehouse. The data warehouse, is that the new system, or is that something you are introducing?
They already have an existing data warehouse. We'll just be connecting it through ETL to connect with Salesforce.
Okay, all right, very good. What about storing files? Where is that happening?
So I didn't see a lot of files except the identity information like passport. So all of that would be stored in standard Salesforce files.
Standard Salesforce files, okay. And if you run out of room, what happens then?
So since we have about 20,000 branch staff members, we'll have enough post-file storage. But we could think about in the longer term, if we are expecting to have a higher number of files, we can think about having an archiving system where we use another system such as Box or SharePoint Online and use a third-party product such as Xfiles Pro to bring in that information in Salesforce.
Okay. So I believe there's a government system that was mentioned here. I don't think I saw that on your system landscape. How does that integrate?
Let me find. So we have government agencies that could subject to an application. My assumption was that this is already supported by the core banking system since that's where the reviews would happen. We only need to indicate that in the CRM system that an application has gone to a government agency for review. So we are just tracking that as a status. But my assumption is that core banking system would be able to handle that.
Okay. All right. Very good. Okay. So for the data warehouse, so we're using that globally, right? And we've got the employees accessing the system through the web using system specific credentials. I believe that's one of the requirements. So is that something you want to keep in place exactly the way it's built currently, or would you improve this user experience somehow?
No. So Okta would be acting as a central IDP to access all of the systems. I didn't see any requirements that would indicate that the internal team members need to access data warehouse in real time as a physical system. But if they do, then we would connect that with Okta and make sure we use Okta as a central repository for the identity.
Central repository for the identity. So are we using Okta Cloud, Okta on-premise?
We're using the Okta Cloud version.
I guess on-premise is not even available with Okta, right? The identity store is happening in the Active Directory?
Yes, for internal users, that would be Active Directory. For third-party agents, it would be LDAP.
Okay, very good, very good. All right, so let's move on to some of the business requirements. In principle, how does the system ensure that the prospect information is not duplicated?
So initially, the existing data would be deduplicated through as part of a data migration strategy through the ETL, where we would be deduplicating all of that data, working with data stewards to identify what would be called as good data and what are the standards for unique data. But once we have gone through the data migration strategy, for new data, we'll have data duplication rules or data duplication rules and matching rules, which is an out-of-the-box feature of Salesforce, and it would send a warning or provide an error message whenever somebody tries to create a duplicate.
So just send the warning and allow, or how would that
we
work?
would stop. So United Bank focuses on data quality very much. So my recommendation would be to not allow creation of duplicates at all.
Okay, and based on which objects would you have the running duplicate matching rules?
We'd have them running on the lead object as well as on the account and contact objects.
Lead account and contact. Okay. Now, so you're working with the data stewards, right? You're going to need to provide them with some sort of feedback on how to even begin identifying good data versus bad data. So what would be your strategy? How would you begin to advise them on the data quality?
So my recommendation would be to analyze the existing data and then use either email and phone as a starting point. And then on top of that, we can have different criteria, such as we can use address and title. So, or we can use a combination of multiple fields. It does not have to be a single field. Well, but I would recommend to keep it as light as possible from a scenario perspective, like just either use an email or a phone number or combination of first name, last name, email, and a title maybe. And then on top of that, I think we can present all of these options and get their thoughts.
Now, you're talking about criteria for deduplication, is that correct?
Yes.
But I'm talking about data quality and perhaps data completeness. So what would be some of the indicators of, let's say, data quality?
I did not understand that question. So
okay. So let's say one of the records is more recent than the other. And you're looking at two duplicates and you identify these as basically the same customer. Which one would you pick to keep? The one that has the latest updates, but it has a lot less information on it, or the older one?
So you mean data survivorship rules? So again, that would be something that the business would have to tell us more about, so that as to what information and what are the different sources that data could come from, and based on that, we'll have to make a decision. Again, my recommendation would be to just try and merge both of the records during part of data migration and get any of the missing information from the records where it could be a potential duplicate.
Okay, so let's suppose you identify, on a field-by-field basis, using combination of your own judgment as well as the feedback from the data stewards, and you identify which fields are more important than others. So how would you construct these ETL scripts to be able to, I guess, merge and delete the unwanted records?
So ETL would have in the scripts would define weightage for all of these fields as to which field needs to be given higher priority. So based on that weightage assigned, we'll have scripts that would check which records meet the criteria of being a duplicate. Sometimes we'll find 100% duplicate, which we can have automated processes to merge those records. But sometimes there would also be cases where they need to be manually reviewed by the data steward. So based on the percentage of chances of a duplicate, we can have the data steward involved and do this as a manual review also.
Okay. And what happens to the historical IDs from the system that you're actually going to be decommissioning? Is this going to be a partial decommission or a complete decommission?
For the CRM systems, it would be a complete decommission. So these systems would be replaced and sunsetted. For the core banking system, we would keep that system, but I didn't see any indications that we have a lot of duplicates in the core banking system. But since this is going to be a big transformation, and we're not sure of the existing capabilities of the core banking system, I would say my recommendation would be to duplicate it for Salesforce right now, and then in future, as a future program, we can think about reduplicating the core banking system as well.
So let me ask you this: so you're decommissioning the existing CRM systems. I'm assuming this is going to be a hard cutover, like on a certain date, you just get everybody to use Salesforce. So you're not running two systems at the same time, or are you?
I didn't see any requirements where we cannot have some downtime. So from a licensing perspective and to avoid any additional costs, I would recommend we do a phased kind of migration, where once we have the team, maybe for some time we will have both of the systems running in parallel, just as a backup, that if something goes wrong during the migration of Salesforce, then we can switch back to the old system. But if everything goes right, then it would be a clean cutoff from the existing system.
So why would something go wrong if you're doing everything right? What are the risks of running two systems at the same time?
The biggest risk is that we could have duplicate data in both of the systems, even after data migration. So we'll have to do a delta load. Once we have a final cutover date, we'll do a delta load where we could have data in both of the systems, and we'll have to deduplicate. But other than that, I do not see that any other risks.
So if you're keeping the legacy CRM system alive, and then you're working already out of Salesforce, wouldn't you have to update the CRM system as well? So isn't that another integration you would have to build? If you're doing a phased approach, right? So that's what you're saying, is that you'll go with a phased approach.
Yes. So we can think about bringing partially, like maybe have our champions that would be part of our data migration strategy, or the transformation strategy, and have those champions work in Salesforce and then bring in the rest of the users. But again, my recommendation would be to just do a clean cutoff. If everything looks good in Salesforce, the UAT and everything goes well, the load testing, performance testing and everything, smoke testing in Salesforce passes, then I would say let's onboard all of the users and retire the existing system.
Okay, so when you say if we can verify that everything is correct, so how would you know that everything appears in Salesforce cleanly and you're confident, like a high degree of confidence that the data has been correctly migrated to Salesforce with all of the existing relationships preserved?
We'll be doing a dry run where we'll be doing a full load in a full sandbox. In that full sandbox, we will be running all of our scripts that we need to run in production. And then again, users test will have data stewards go into the environment and verify all of the scripts are running, if all of the data looks good. And if everything looks good, then only we'll go ahead and migrate everything to production. But we'll use that as a training exercise so that we know how the migration scripts would be running and how long they would be taking, what are the points of failure for those scripts.
I understand that in general terms, but when you say the users will be verifying that the data looks good, what does that mean exactly for the users? Like, how would they know that the data actually looks good? Is it by gut feeling? Or is it the user interface design? Like, how do they know it is actually correct?
So that they would be manually verifying that data.
Like
would
all
be
of the
logged.
data, the entire like millions of records?
Not exactly, not all of the data. We can create scripts also to make sure to see if the connections are there as expected. The canonical, if they meet the standards of the canonical database, we can also have data stewards like do partial runs so that they're not verifying all of the data, but they are picking up random records and trying to match and verify that the data looks good.
So are you migrating all of the customer data into Salesforce, or are you going to be only working with like active customers? Let's say the customers in the bank, of the bank, that are no longer active customers, they've closed their accounts. But for some regulatory reasons, you still need to maintain their records. Would that go into Salesforce or would that go somewhere else?
That would go into data warehouse. We'll only have active data in Salesforce.
Okay, so if you can expand this screen over here, so I want to see where this goes. All right. Okay, so I see you that data warehouse is over there, so that would be important to say. Perhaps final question here. So the users, are they going to be, so during the initial build, and I'm assuming you're going to have demos, like regularly demos to the client and so on, and perhaps training exercises, things of that nature. Are you going to be using real data or synthetic data?
We'll be using a partial set of the real data just to make sure that all of our user acceptance testing users understand and they're familiar with what they are working. So we will do a partial load in the UAT sandbox as well, and that's where we'll be doing the demos.
Of the real data, okay. So this is sensitive data, right? And you're going to have developers potentially from around the world accessing all of this data. What is the risk associated with using the real data where developers perhaps will not have access to production?
So developers would not have access to the UAT environments as well. Developers would be working out of the sandboxes. And once they've completed all of their features, they would just be will be using a source control branch strategy here, where they would be using different branches. So we'll have feature branches. Developers would work with feature branches, and then would have release managers, pushing it into the QA environment, the UAT environment, and the pull environment. But developers would not have access to the UAT environments. That would be specifically only for trainers and users who need to do testings and training demos and everything.
Okay. Thank you for that. Let's take a look at some of the sales cycle business requirements real quick. There's the requirement number 4. Well, basically, UB branch staff call interested customers after the workshop. So they collect the customer's information at these various workshops, and then they call those people. So you are creating this custom, I believe, to schedule these appointments?
Yes, I have a custom appointment object here.
But what's the user experience? How does this appointment get created?
So we have a screen flow, kind of a schedule an appointment quick action based on the lead. That opens up a LWC component, since before scheduling the appointment, the branch staff needs to visualize which branch would be the nearest. So we'll use the LWC component to map where's the current customer's location and what are the nearest branches. And then based on that, the branch staff would be selecting the right branch location and scheduling an appointment.
You seem to be using LWCs quite a bit. Do you have any kind of aversion to using standard functionality and perhaps standard products that exist for this very purpose?
So I did consider using Lightning Scheduler here, but then there would have been a lot of maintenance, and just for one feature, I didn't want to use Lightning Scheduler. That's for very complex schedulings. I saw this as a very a simple scheduling with just a requirement that allows the team to visualize. So I went to the custom solution here.
I see. But as far as maintaining the LWCs, you think it's going to be a lower lift?
I'm not expecting a lot of changes in this, but I would say since it's just one LWC component with very limited functionality, we could easily maintain it as well.
Okay, so this branch staff, they would like to view a map. This kind of a funky requirements. They want to see a map, and the idea is that they would want to meet the customers at the local branch, so perhaps the branch that's closest to the customer, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so they could themselves be working out of a different type of, a different branch altogether. And then they're going to meet the customer at that local branch, but they would have to do a lot of driving, right? To visit all these different branches and different customers just to make it easier for the customer to meet them, right? So let's say I met 10 different people at this event, at this workshop, but they live, hours apart. And I have the branches that I gotta go to. How would you approach that whole situation? How would you prioritize these types of calendar appointments?
So if this type of requirement is introduced, then I would definitely go with the Salesforce Maps, which does allow us as an out-of-the-box feature to schedule these visits where we can visit different branches based on and meet different customers. So that would be an option that we'd have to explore if we want to think about schedule optimizations as well. But since in this scenario, I didn't find any requirements where we have branch staff working out of different branches as well. So my understanding was that they can either assign it to a different branch manager or different branch staff in their region, and then they can just tell them that, you can visit this branch and meet this person, or they can assign those appointments to them.
And if you would like to actually offer the prospects a way to book their own appointments, what would you do? Well, let's say you meet a customer at this event and they are interested in meeting with you, but they just don't know at the moment what their calendar looks like. They have to check with their spouse. So you want to give them the opportunity to actually go ahead and book an appointment with you or with someone else when they're good and ready. So how would you approach that?
Yes, in that case, then we'll have to expose the LWC component onto our Experience Cloud site as well, and so that they can book their own appointments, and we'll have to expose the appointment object onto the Experience Cloud site also.
Okay, and if these customers, so would you require then the customer to create an account before they do that?
No, so when they are booking these appointments, if we just need to send them a link to book an appointment?
You just give them a link and say, go to unitedbank.com, and there's a button that says create an appointment. That's all they got to do. They'll probably remember that, right? So then they come to Experience Cloud, and do you require them to first create an account before they book an appointment, or can they book an appointment?
In that case, then I would pivot my solution from a custom to Salesforce Lightning Scheduler, which has out-of-the-box capabilities for these kind of things, where we can have a screen flow exposed on the Experience Cloud site, where they can go ahead, book the appointment, and even create leads if they do not exist in the system.
Okay, and now that we have their needs assessments, so I believe you're also using the LWC for that. How do you make sure that, let's say it's not complete, the needs analysis is not yet complete, but you need to save that part way through the whole process, and then you can retrieve it at a later day. So
we'll have different stages on every stage. We'll just have a partial save that goes ahead and updates the need analysis record on the backend, and then when they try to again then start the process again, it would find their most recent record for the need analysis, and based on that populate the information in those steps, and we can have the logic where it automatically picks it up at the exact same step where it left off.
And so all of this is custom?
Yes, the need analysis is custom. The kind of visualization that was required, that would allow them to pick recommendations or be able to select out of different, based on the information that they are answering to. They had to view different recommendations. They could ask the customer to choose from one, or they can select multiple recommendations as well. So based on the complexity, they decided to go with the LWC instead of a screen flow.
how would the recommendations actually work? The algorithm would base it on what exactly? So you've got a list of products and...
So my understanding was that they have those questions that they have predefined. Based on that, we'll build some kind of logic. We'll have custom metadata to store that logic where if this question was answered and if somebody's answered yes to this question, these are 4 options as in recommendation that you can provide. And then, have the next step. If this question was answered this, then this would be eligible or this product would be eligible. And then based on all of these criteria, we can just present them as recommendations.
Aren't you replicating existing functionality?
I did consider using next best action. That is available in an unlimited edition out of the box, but I couldn't remember the exact steps. So probably during the implementation, I would talk to a Salesforce consultant and then get the capabilities there, and then might pivot to using the next best action as well, or recommendation builder. I think it's called Einstein recommendations. But I was not sure about the feature, so I went for a solution that worked for sure, but I would definitely consider that as an option also.
So the final answer would be custom or Einstein recommendations?
So for now, I'll go with the custom solution because I know that would work 100%. But during the implementation, I would definitely consider Einstein recommendations as well to see if that would be a better fit for the solution.
Okay. So let's see here. Couple of quick things here. So we've got the applicants and we've got the application itself. And the applicants, let's say any of them are under 18, you're using validation through record-triggered flow. Is that the easiest way to do this?
Yes, since the validation needed to happen based on 2 different objects, because the application itself does not need to be validated, it needs to be validated through the applicant information. So before record trigger flow with an error action would be sufficient instead of a validation rule.
Okay, so tell me how that works from a user perspective. So what record is the user working with?
So user is working with the application record. So they try to submit that application, right? So they try to move the status of the application to indicate that they have completed their work, but it will not allow them to move because every time the application it tries to save, we'll have a before record triggered flow being triggered on the status change that would verify and see how many applicants do we have. If it's more than 5 applicants, it would throw an error using the standard error action, indicating that you have more applicants. And then it would also check for the age of the applicants as well, based on their date of birth. And then if one of the applicants is, let's say, less than 18 years old, then also it would use that same error action to indicate that there is an error. So they work very much like standard validation rule, except that we can have logic placed in it.
When we say the user working with the application and the applicant object, is this an external or internal user?
It's an internal user.
So I'm just wondering, if the user who applies in the first place, that information has to come from somewhere. Is that information entered by the internal user or external user?
That would be internal as well. While they are prospect, it's just one person indicating, but then they can also introduce other members of their family who would be part of those applications, and then they would be then added as applicants into that application.
So wouldn't it be better to not even allow them to become applicants in the first place? If they're a prospect and they're under 18 years of age, they cannot move forward. So what's the point of having them in the system in the first place?
Allow me a second to think. I see your point. I think we can move that record triggered flow on the applicant's object. The reason why I went for the application was that it would work as a validation rather than stopping them completely. Probably because there could be edge cases also where if the application is older, but I do see a point. So I think I'll change my solution to have a record trigger flow on the applicant's object and then not allow creation of the applicants if they're not eligible, or if somebody tries to create a sixth applicant against an application, we can stop them right there.
And you seem to be using the same kind of pattern in the next requirement, like a maximum of 5 applicants allowed per bank account. And you seem to be getting also favoring the record trigger flow. Wouldn't that be a simpler out-of-the-box solution for this?
Not really, because validation rules would only allow us to validate based on the data of the same object, and they wouldn't really be able to compare it with other objects records. And hence, either I would have to go with the flow or an Apex trigger. But now, like, we have the error action that we can do it in a flow, so we'll just have a small logic that kind of checks the other objects, records, and information as well before deciding if the record is valid or not.
Mm-hmm. All right. Now, you're using the VF email templates, but I believe are you using the Marketing Cloud anywhere? Yes. You
not for these email templates. I was using VF email templates to provide multiple languages, but I do see a possibility where we can just have different email templates for different languages, since it's not very dynamic, and I understood that as a manual email to be sent. So we can consider using normal emails, just email templates that are created in different languages.
Which system has higher limits, Marketing Cloud or Salesforce?
Marketing Cloud, of course. For email sending, Marketing Cloud would have higher limits.
So are we dealing with transactional type emails or marketing type emails?
These are more personalized, or so transactional emails would be to just ask for telling people about their application status, but this is more personalized where we are asking for specific information, maybe based on their current application. So I saw that as a manual email send.
Manual email send, okay. So what you're saying is if the emails, well, when transactional, those for me would be transactional. You're not trying to convince them to open an account. They already have an application in place. Does the Marketing Cloud have some sort of a capability, since it's a big lift to create Marketing Cloud implementation, can you use Marketing Cloud for transactional emails? That's what I'm trying to find out.
Yes, we can use the transactional messaging API to send emails to ESB using Marketing Cloud also. So that is an alternate.
Did you say, I'm sorry, through ESB? So you're integrating Marketing Cloud via ESB?
Yes, so if we need to send like one-to-one emails to Marketing Cloud, then that would be better handled using the transactional messaging API, because Marketing Cloud Connect wouldn't really allow us to send more personalized or emails to an individual customer.
Gotcha. Okay. Now, if we're looking at the customer servicing process, there's an integration that I wanted to touch base on. So customer servicing process, if the customer does not exist, they need the ability to create the customer and send this information to the core banking system that will return a customer number. So I believe you're using a fire and forget pattern?
That is correct, yes. So when a customer is created in Sales, we'll trigger a platform event, and that platform event would be subscribed by the ESB, and then ESB would then do a remote call into Salesforce, fetch any information about that customer, and then would create that same customer in core banking system. And then core banking system would then return that unique customer number, and then ESB would do a remote call in and update that number in Salesforce as well in a custom field.
Why did you go with the fire and forget pattern?
The fire and forget patterns are much easier for talking to third-party systems, and they would not have a dependency on the running user. So from a user experience perspective, they would behave better. There could be instances where we might have to have some retry logics as well if the request fails. So the system would be able to handle that automatically, and the user would not really have to wait for the request to be completed.
But then the user does not know right away if in fact the core banking system has accepted the information that Salesforce sent, they would have to probably come back and look up this customer later, thus delaying the whole process. Wouldn't request and reply be better here?
Since this process only creates a customer, I'm assuming that creating the customer process is not a complicated. This pattern would be a better fit when their application needs to be sent. So we do have a request and reply when their application is sent so that the user is informed if the application was accepted by the core banking system or not. But I assume that the creation of the customer can be an asynchronous process.
Do you need a lot of information to create a customer? Like, what's the minimum amount of information that you need?
I'm assuming that it's just very basic, where we are creating the customer's name, maybe their title or their address, I think would be very important, but that's mostly it.
What's the system of record, in your opinion, for customers as well as their financial accounts?
Primarily, customers would be managed in Salesforce, but I do see some instances. I did see a requirement where customers and applications could directly be created in the core banking system that we would be bringing back into Salesforce through a nightly sync. But my understanding is that Salesforce would be the master of customers.
What about financial accounts and operations of the bank itself?
That would be managed by the core banking system, and that was the object that I missed. It would be that information would only be brought in as an external object for viewing, because we have about 10 million records being processed per day.
Why would you need to view that in the first place?
Because we had a requirement where we needed to report or see the customer staff. The customer staff wanted to see the financial transactional information.
Transaction information, okay.
Yeah.
So
bank account transactions also.
So here's my main question. So you're creating a customer. So this is the very first step to getting new business into the bank, right? So you don't even have the business yet because the application has been approved and no money has changed hands. So you're just creating a customer, you're sending the basic contact information, let's just say, first, last name, social security number, and some contact information, phone number, email address. Can you work with that customer if you only create it in Salesforce, but you have not yet created it in the core banking system?
My recommendation would be to create the customer as soon as they are created in Salesforce, because when the applications are submitted, and if we create the customer while submitting an application, that is being done using a request and reply pattern. And since we'll have multiple integrations involved, like where we are sending out a call out first to create a customer, bring back the customer information, then create an application, that could be a long lasting, request, and it could time out in Salesforce. So my recommendation would be to create the customers beforehand so that we don't have to go through that process again, and stamp that customer unique ID on the customer. And then when an application is submitted, it becomes a lighter request and quickly processed, and then users are able to see in real time if the request went through or not.
Okay, and as you're creating a customer, you need to put in the address. So how would you be validating that address in the first place?
So for the address, I'm using Google APIs to validate those addresses. And for the mobile system, I have a screen flow that is also using an external service record posted through the ESP. So in that screen flow, we are validating that address real time using Google APIs. And similarly for the contact center agents as well, we have a screen flow that allows them to update address using the same process.
So walk me through the process. Like, let's say you're creating a customer and you need to be able to validate their address, and then you need to create them in the core banking system and verify that they have been created in the core banking system successfully. So how would that work from a system orchestration standpoint?
So the branch staff would use their Salesforce mobile app to create the customer. They would be using a screen flow, and before they create the customer, in that screen flow, we will be validating the address and will stop the customer creation right there if the address was not validated at all. So the customer would not be created at all.
Okay, so real quick, I'm assuming you're talking about the mobile app that they are somewhere in the field at the workshop, and so that creates a prospect, which is a lead, correct?
Yes.
So what I'm talking about now, the branch manager is sitting comfortably at their desk in the branch, and they have the customer information to input. Would they be creating a lead at that point, or is it a person account?
So if they are adding details for somebody for the first time, they will go through that lead process since they need to gather requirements about the need analysis as well. So they would be creating them as a lead in the system, and then they would be using the same screen flow to input those leads, which we can expose as a global action. So, before a lead is entered into the system, we use the request and reply pattern to validate the address first, and then allow the lead creation.
That wraps up this mock with Amit Yadav and the United Bank scenario. Amit, great work here. This was focused, dense, and showed clear progress, especially in how you framed the problem and defended your decisions. Like every strong mock, there are refinements to make, but you're absolutely on the right trajectory. Keep practicing, keep pressure testing your story, and keep sharpening those trade-offs. This is exactly how people break through on the review board. For anyone watching who's on the CTA path, if you want coaching, structured mocks, or even just a quick word of advice or encouragement, feel free to reach out to me at LucidCTA. I'm always happy to help architects level up and move closer to that board pass. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the other side of your comfort zone.